course, you've been in the role for 10 years. 8 of those years will have been, I suppose, the landscape changed 8 years ago, really, in 2010 with the reduction in VAT. Is it understandable that politicians might have had to take a harder line from that point?
To be honest, I think when I came in, it was actually tougher. I think politicians well knew what was going to happen. Certainly those that were engaging with us at that time, but for obvious reasons, they couldn't say very much. And I think to a lot of people, the VAT revision came like a bolt out of the blue. They'd felt up until that point quite cosseted from the kind of global economic issues that were going on. So we did have, almost as soon as I came into post, really, a much harder line in terms of pay negotiations. And it was the signal that something was coming. And then we did see it. So I don't think it's ever been particularly easy. Obviously, the situation was forced on the island, and that's made things more difficult. But I think there were tough matters that would have had to have been attended to. The size and scope of government, inefficiencies. They are things that should be looked at and dealt with in the good times as well as the bad. And so that would have happened, I think, eventually, irrespective of, any kind of global economic occurrences.
You mentioned efficiencies in government earlier on. We've just seen Tynwald members approve a progress report for the SAVE programme, the initiative which is looking to find efficiencies within government. I mean, are you supportive of a programme of change like that?
I mean, we are going to be in talks next week to understand that initiative a little bit better. I'd like to reserve comment until that happens, because we're not against change per se, and most of the time, and you don't hear about this because it's not controversial and it just happens, we actively work with our members and the employer to, usher in change in as seamless a way as possible, with as little conflict as possible. And there are occasionally trigger points where we disagree, and that's where everybody hears about it and they think unions are making trouble and won't agree to anything. So we're supportive of efforts to produce meaningful change that are going to be good for the public and good for the staff. We want a win-win for everybody here. But I'll reserve judgment on that until we know more about it and what it's going to mean on the ground. And also we understand what our members' attitude to it is. What I'm not supportive of is initiatives in government that trumpet to be big savings initiatives, but actually don't deliver that, because we've seen a lot of that too. Or where there's an awful amount of furious activity by government which produces negligible results. If this is going to have a very significant effect, for example, on morale, on staffing and recruitment and retention of staff, for a very negligible saving, you've got to start wondering, is that actually value for money in real terms for the Manx taxpayer?
And as you leave the Isle of Man, what do you see as the challenges for, I suppose, government going forward, workers going forward, and the unions going forward from this point?
On a general level, the biggest single challenge that always faces this island is our government. So, as an island, we're not as unique sometimes, I think, as we like to think. There are lots of jurisdictions that are facing the same kinds of issues that we have. And, there are lots of jurisdictions, a low tax jurisdiction with very high level and range of public services to fund. That's our biggest challenge. How can you have a low tax regime and have the kind of public services that people demand and expect here? I think the biggest challenge that we've got is trying to get the public to see that actually what you get for what you pay is really good. And the problem is, the biggest challenge we always have is that we have awful governments on the Isle of Man. I don't think we have got a very good calibre of politicians at any given moment. I think we've got some absolutely, and we have had and still do have some absolutely appalling people in positions of power who're simply not competent for the job. That's the biggest issue that we have. We simply do not have the quality of politicians on this island that we need to take us forward and modernise.